the girl by the slide. The chipped blue paint of the slide gleamed under the afternoon sun, almost mocking the little girl sitting beside it. Leo watched her from the park bench, a knot tightening in his stomach. Mia was halfway up the climbing frame, her bright yellow raincoat a beacon against the drab autumn landscape. He'd been bringing her here for weeks, and for weeks the girl had been there too. Always alone. She was small, even for her age, with dark hair pulled back in a tight braid that emphasized the delicate bones of her face. Her clothes were clean but worn, a faded pink jacket a size too big swallowing her tiny frame. He hadn't once seen her smile, hadn't heard her speak. She just sat, watching the other children play, her dark eyes holding a depth of sadness that felt too profound for someone so young. Mia, ever the social butterfly, bounded over, her cheeks flushed from exertion. "Daddy, look. I made it to the top." She puffed out her chest, momentarily forgetting whatever grand adventure she'd been narrating moments before. "I saw you, superstar," Leo said, ruffling her hair. "You're getting so brave." Mia giggled, then her brow furrowed. "Daddy, why doesn't that girl ever play?" She pointed a small finger in Lily's direction. "She's always just sitting there." Leo followed her gaze. "I don't know, sweetie. Maybe she's shy." He felt a familiar pang of protectiveness, a leftover ache from a past he tried so hard to bury. He hated seeing anyone, especially a child, look so lonely. "Shy?" Mia considered this, tilting her head. "But it's fun. I could ask her to play." "Want to, Daddy? Can we?" Her eagerness was infectious, and Leo found himself reluctantly agreeing. He stood and walked over with Mia trailing close behind, her hand firmly clasped in his. As they approached, the girl's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing across her face. "Hi," Mia said, her voice bright and unwavering. "I'm Mia. What's your name?" The girl hesitated, her gaze darting between Mia and Leo. "Lily," she whispered, so softly he almost didn't hear it. "Lily," Mia repeated, testing the name on her tongue. "That's a pretty name. Do you want to play on the slide with me?" Lily's eyes dropped to the ground and she shook her head, her braids swaying slightly. "No, thank you." "Why not?" Mia persisted, undeterred. "It's really fun. We can race." Leo crouched down, trying to appear less imposing. "It's okay if you don't want to, Lily. But Mia's right, it is a lot of fun. Maybe you could just try one time." He kept his tone gentle, hoping to coax her out of her shell. Lily remained silent for a long moment, her small hands twisting in her lap. Finally, she shook her head again, a barely audible no escaping her lips. She seemed to shrink in on herself, a tiny, fragile thing overwhelmed by their attention. Leo sighed inwardly. He didn't want to push her, to make her feel even more uncomfortable. "Okay," he said softly. "Maybe another time then." He stood up, gently guiding Mia back towards the climbing frame. As they walked away, he glanced back. Lily was still there, sitting by the slide, her gaze fixed on the ground. The knot in Leo's stomach tightened again. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong, that there was more to Lily's sadness than just shyness. He knew that look. He'd seen it before. He just didn't know why it was etched on the face of a child. Silent tears. The swing set emitted a forlorn groan, a melancholic tune accompanying Lily's subdued weeping. From their customary bench, Leo observed, while Mia, a few feet away, concentrated on constructing a sandcastle. Lily's park visits had become routine, as reliable as the sunset. And with each appearance, her sorrow seemed to intensify. He hadn't registered it at first, a brief sniffle easily mistaken for allergies or a rogue piece of fluff. But lately, the weeping had intensified. He'd glimpsed her face, downcast and shining with unshed tears, between the arc of the swing. Today, the tears flowed ceaselessly, darkening her faded denim jacket. Mia, always perceptive, abandoned her unfinished creation and hurried over, her brow furrowed in concern. "Daddy," she whispered, tugging his sleeve. "Lily's crying again." He sighed, raking fingers through his hair. He was aware. He'd been attempting to disregard it, hoping it would dissipate, that she might find companionship, that somehow the gloom would lift on its own. But it hadn't. "She seems really unhappy," Mia pressed, her lower lip quivering slightly. "Can't we help?" He drew Mia onto his lap, her warmth a comfort against the disquiet in his chest. "I don't know, sweetheart. Sometimes people just need to grieve. But it's every single day, Daddy. Maybe she needs a friend." Mia's eyes, mirroring his late wife's, implored him. Leo turned back to Lily. She was fixedly staring at the ground, her shoulders trembling almost imperceptibly. He pictured the burden she carried, this quiet, unseen weight. A memory surfaced of his own daughter years prior, consumed by sorrow. The crushing helplessness he'd felt then, the desperate desire to shield her from the ache. He couldn't bear the thought of another child suffering in silence. Acknowledging that he should offer some solace, he remained unsure how. He was a stranger, and she appeared so withdrawn, so vulnerable. He feared intrusion, making matters worse. He didn't want to frighten her. A sudden gust stirred Lily's hair, a stray strand clinging to her tear-stained cheek. She brushed it aside with a shaky hand, the gesture so small, so exposed that it resonated deeply within him. That familiar surge of protectiveness rose within him, the overwhelming desire to mend, to erase the suffering. Still, he hesitated. He was consumed by the worry of misstepping, of causing greater distress than he alleviated. Silence thickened the air, broken only by the repetitive groan of the swings and Lily's stifled sobs. Indecision paralyzed him. Sensing his conflict, Mia squeezed his hand. Maybe I could ask her to help with my castle tomorrow? Leo looked at his daughter, her eyes brimming with genuine care. Perhaps a helping hand, not intervention, was what was needed. Perhaps all Lily required was a friendly face, a tender invitation into connection. He inhaled deeply. That's a wonderful idea, Mia. Truly. While he wasn't certain how to proceed, he knew he couldn't passively observe Lily's quiet sorrow much longer. Behind the oak tree, the swings creaked a rhythmic counterpoint to Mia's delighted squeals as she soared through the air. Leo pushed her gently, his gaze drifting towards the ancient oak that stood sentinel at the edge of the park. He'd noticed her again. The girl, Lily Chin. For weeks, he'd seen her lurking near the tree, a shadow clinging to its broad trunk. Usually, she just sat, book in hand, a silent observer. Today, however, was different. Her shoulders were shaking. Leo slowed Mia's swing to a stop. "Hey, Peanut," he said, ruffling her hair. "Want an ice cream?" Mia, ever the opportunist, nodded enthusiastically. "Chocolate fudge swirl." He steered her towards the ice cream van, his mind still on the girl. He bought Mia her ice cream, plastering a smile on his face, but his eyes kept flicking back to the oak. Lily hadn't moved. The shaking continued, a silent, desperate tremor that resonated with a long-dormant ache in Leo's own chest. He couldn't ignore it. Not this time. "Stay here, sweetie," he instructed Mia, pointing to a nearby bench. "Daddy needs to check something." He walked towards the oak, his footsteps muffled by the soft grass. As he drew closer, the sound of Lily's sobs became clearer, raw and unrestrained. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to intrude. But the sheer depth of her despair propelled him forward. Rounding the tree, he saw her huddled against its rough bark, her face buried in her knees. The book lay forgotten on the ground. Her thin frame trembled with each sob. He knelt down, keeping a respectful distance. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you okay?" She flinched, lifting her head abruptly. Her eyes were red and swollen, her cheeks stained with tears. She looked startled, like a deer caught in headlights. She didn't say a word, just stared at him with a mixture of fear and shame. He held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "It's okay. I saw you were upset. Is there anything I can do?" She shook her head, quickly wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "No," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "Just leave me alone." He didn't move. He couldn't. The memory of Sarah, of not knowing, of not being there when she needed him most, was a constant shadow. He wouldn't make the same mistake again. "It's okay to not be okay," he said gently. "Sometimes just talking about it helps." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. He could see the struggle within her, the desire to confide warring with her ingrained shyness. After a long moment, she lowered her gaze and turned away, effectively ending the conversation. He stood up slowly. "All right," he said. "But if you change your mind, I'm over there with my daughter, Mia." He gestured towards the bench. "We're usually here every afternoon." He left her then, walking back to Mia, his brow furrowed with concern. As he approached the bench, he glanced back at the oak. Lily was still there, a solitary figure swallowed by the shadows. They stayed at the park for another hour, but Leo couldn't shake the image of Lily's tear-streaked face. As they were leaving, he noticed she was gone. He scanned the park, but she was nowhere to be seen. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. She was walking down the street, head bowed, shoulders slumped. A sudden impulse, an uncharacteristic urge to protect her, washed over him. "Mia, hold my hand tight," he said, his voice firm. The rundown apartment. Still, the tears flowed. A relentless procession tracing paths down her face, catching the sunlight as she walked, head bowed against an unseen gale. Leo shadowed her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. He felt like an interloper, intruding upon a sorrow meant to be borne in solitude. Yet the specter of Mia, utterly alone, haunted him. He couldn't simply stand idly by. She veered off the main thoroughfare, the houses shrinking in scale, their gardens less meticulously maintained. The air itself seemed to thicken, trading the perfume of roses for a sharp, coppery tang reminiscent of aged plumbing and wet stone. He lingered, feigning interest in a faded street sign, his pulse a heavy drumbeat in his chest. Lily halted before a building clearly past its prime. Flaking paint clung to the aged bricks like old wounds refusing to heal. A solitary bulb nearing the end of its life cast a feeble, jaundiced light over the doorway. This felt incongruous, a mismatch. Not the sort of place he'd expect, not for a young woman who radiated such understated elegance, who always seemed to carry the weight of worlds within the pages of a book. Her fingers, trembling slightly, wrestled with her purse, eventually extracting a key. The lock yielded with a grating complaint, a rusty screech that echoed in the quiet street. She slipped inside, the door sign shut behind her. Across the street, Leo stood, acutely aware of the city's hum. A distant siren's mournful cry, the guttural rumble of a passing bus, the joyous shouts of children playing soccer further down the block. A wave of emotion washed over him, a complex mixture he couldn't quite decipher. Was it pity? Remorse? A creeping disquiet that coiled in his stomach like a cold serpent? He desperately wanted to offer solace, but how could he? He remained ignorant of the source of her pain. A clumsy intrusion felt reckless, yet inaction felt equally unacceptable. He pictured her inside, wrestling with unseen adversaries. Mia in a similar predicament without a friendly face to seek out. He started to cross the street, then paused. The hallway lay shrouded in shadow, visible through the streaked glass of the entrance. He noticed a row of mailboxes, each bearing the scars of time and neglect, the names on them faded and indistinct. It felt wrong, a violation of privacy. He was nothing more than a stranger, a man lurking on the periphery. A glance at his watch reminded him of his responsibilities. Mia expected him home soon. He needed to prepare dinner, assist with her homework, offer his presence and support. The pull of their familiar routine felt grounding, a beacon in a swirling fog of uncertainty. He retreated a step, the knot in his stomach tightening its hold. He couldn't abandon Lily to her fate, not now. But neither could he risk exacerbating the situation. He needed a strategy. He needed to proceed with caution. He needed to find a way to help Lily without frightening her, without overstepping boundaries, without repeating the mistakes that continued to haunt him. A sign of hope. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as Leo navigated the familiar route home. Mia chattered beside him, recounting the intricacies of a jump rope game at recess. He listened with half an ear, his gaze drifting towards the houses they passed, a sense of unease tugging at him. Lily's downcast face from earlier that day kept replaying in his mind. Suddenly, a faded blue sign caught his eye. Community Center, welcome, it proclaimed, the lettering chipped and peeling. He hadn't noticed it before, tucked away on a side street just off their usual path. He slowed the car, his mind racing. Could this be the answer? What is it, Daddy? Mia asked, her voice pulling him back. Just looking, sweetie, he replied, his eyes still fixed on the sign. He pictured Lily sitting alone on the park bench, day after day. An idea began to form, tentative at first, then blossoming with possibility. A community center. Surely they had after-school programs, activities, maybe even just a safe space for kids to be. He imagined Lily, no longer isolated, surrounded by other children, laughter filling the air. The thought brought a warmth to his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. He knew he was probably grasping at straws, but the hope, however fragile, was enough to spur him into action. He wrestled with his protective instincts. He was still wary of inserting himself too deeply into Lily's life, remembering the sharp reprimand from her mother. But this wasn't about him, it was about Lily. Mia, how about we check something out real quick? He asked, making a sudden turn onto the side street. Where are we going? Mia asked, her voice laced with curiosity. Exploring, Leo said, forcing a smile. He pulled into the small, gravel parking lot of the community center. The building was a modest, single-story structure, its paint faded and cracked. A basketball hoop stood crookedly near the entrance, the net torn and flapping in the breeze. It wasn't much to look at, but Leo felt a flicker of anticipation. Stay here, okay? I'll just be a minute. Mia nodded, engrossed in a drawing in her notebook. Leo took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and something vaguely floral, a welcome change from the exhaust fumes of the main road. He walked towards the entrance, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation. This could be a turning point, not just for Lily, but maybe even for him, a chance to finally break free from the shadows of the past. He reached for the door, ready to face whatever lay behind it. Ms. Rodriguez's story. The oak tree seemed to hum with Lily's sorrow. Leo watched Mia skip a few feet ahead, oblivious, her bright pink backpack bouncing. He lingered, the image of the girl's tear-streaked face etched in his mind. He had to know what was wrong. He spotted a woman unlocking the door to a small, brightly painted building across the street. A sign above the door read Harmony Community Center. Hoping she might know something, he steered Mia towards it. "Hey, sweetie, let's just say hi to whoever's opening up here." "Okay." Mia, ever agreeable, nodded. "Hi," she chirped as they approached. The woman smiled, her face creased with warmth. "Well, hello there. And what bright sunshine you've brought with you." She had kind eyes and wore a vibrant scarf patterned with hummingbirds. "I'm Ms. Rodriguez. And you are?" "I'm Leo, and this is my daughter, Mia. A pleasure to meet you both. Is there something I can help you with?" Leo hesitated, unsure how to phrase his concern without sounding intrusive. "Actually, I've noticed a young girl, about Mia's age, sitting by that big oak tree every afternoon. She seems unhappy. I was just wondering if you knew her." Ms. Rodriguez's smile softened, a hint of sadness entering her eyes. "Ah, you must mean Lily." "Yes, I know Lily. Sweet girl. Her mother, May, works double shifts at the factory across town. It's tough work, but she's determined to provide for Lily." "Double shifts?" Leo frowned. "So Lily's alone after school?" "Not entirely," Ms. Rodriguez explained, gesturing towards the community center. "We try to be a safe haven for kids whose parents are working late. Lily usually comes here after school, but some days she just needs a quiet spot." She paused, her gaze following the distant drone of a truck. "May is a hard worker, but the factory doesn't pay much. They're constantly worried about making ends meet." Leo's chest tightened. He knew that worry. He remembered the gnawing anxiety of those lean years after Sarah. "What does the center do?" he asked, wanting to understand how he could help. "We offer after-school programs, tutoring, a food bank, ESL classes for adults, whatever the community needs. We're a small operation, but we have a big heart," she said, tapping her chest. "We rely heavily on volunteers and donations." Mia, who had been quietly observing, piped up. "Can we volunteer, Daddy?" Leo looked down at his daughter's earnest face and felt a surge of warmth. Maybe this was exactly what they needed, a way to give back, to connect. "I think we can, Mia. I think we definitely can." He looked back at Ms. Rodriguez. "Tell me what you need." "Volunteering together." Leo watched Mia skip ahead, her bright yellow backpack bouncing against her back. He lingered, though, his gaze drawn to the girl by the oak tree, Lily. The same girl he'd seen every day this week, perched on the same root, tears silently tracking down her face. A knot tightened in his stomach. "I'm going to volunteer at the community center," he announced that evening, the words feeling heavier than he anticipated. Mia looked up from her homework, eyebrows raised. "Really? Doing what?" Ms. Rodriguez mentioned they need help with after-school activities. "Supervising, reading, stuff like that." He shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. He wasn't about to tell Mia it was mostly because of Lily. Mia grinned. "That sounds fun. Can I come too? I'm good with kids." Leo hesitated. He was torn. The community center was safe, well supervised. But still. "Are you sure?" "It'll be work. Dad, please. It'll be way more fun if we do it together. Besides," she added with a knowing look, "you look like you need a friend there too." He relented. Mia had a way of seeing right through him. The next afternoon, the Harmony Community Center buzzed with youthful energy. Kids painted at easels, built precarious towers with blocks, and chased each other through the makeshift obstacle course Ms. Rodriguez had set up. Leo found himself surprisingly enjoying the chaos, helping a little boy glue googly eyes onto a construction paper monster. Mia, however, gravitated immediately towards Lily, who sat alone in a corner, drawing furiously in a notebook. Leo watched from across the room, a protective instinct flaring. Mia knelt beside Lily, offering a small, tentative smile. Lily didn't respond, continuing to scribble. "Hi," Mia said, her voice soft. "I'm Mia. That's my dad over there." She pointed to Leo, who offered a wave. Lily's eyes flickered in his direction before returning to her notebook. Mia didn't give up. "What are you drawing? It looks really cool." Silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the boisterous laughter of the other children. Then, Lily slowly turned the notebook around, revealing a detailed sketch of the oak tree outside. Its branches were bare, stark against a swirling, stormy sky. "It's beautiful," Mia said sincerely, "but it looks kind of sad." Lily's lower lip trembled. "It is sad," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mia reached out and gently touched Lily's arm. "It doesn't have to be. Maybe we can draw some leaves on it? Make it spring again?" Lily looked up at Mia, her eyes red-rimmed but holding a flicker of hope. She nodded almost imperceptibly. Leo watched the interaction, a small weight lifting from his chest. Mia had a gift, a natural ability to connect with people, to offer comfort without judgment. He saw Lily pick up another crayon, her hand less tense this time. Maybe, just maybe, this was exactly what they both needed. The park picnic. Leo spent the next evening after work sketching lists on a notepad, a furrow in his brow. Mia was perched on the arm of the sofa, diligently coloring a picture of a unicorn with rainbow hair. "What are you doing, Daddy?" she asked, tilting her head. "Planning a picnic," he said, absent-mindedly chewing on the end of his pen. "For you and some of the kids from the community center." He remembered Lily's tear-stained face, the way she always sat alone. He wanted to change that, even if just for an afternoon. Mia squealed with delight. "A picnic? Can we make sandwiches with crusts cut off?" Leo smiled. "Of course. And cookies. Lots and lots of cookies." He added cookies to his list, along with juice boxes, a frisbee, and a large blanket. He even considered bringing his old guitar, but quickly dismissed the idea. He wasn't exactly concert-ready these days. The next day dawned bright and sunny, a perfect picnic day. Leo packed the car, Mia buzzing around him like a tiny, excited bee. When they arrived at the park, a few kids were already there, shyly standing near the playground. He recognized a couple from Ms. Rodriguez's description. Mia, however, needed no prompting. She raced over, her unicorn picture clutched in her hand. "Look, I made a unicorn. Do you like unicorns?" Leo spread the blanket under the shade of a sprawling oak tree, the same oak tree he'd seen Lily sitting under. He scanned the park and spotted her, sitting on a bench a little ways away, her head down. Taking a deep breath, he walked over. "Hi, Lily," he said gently, crouching down beside her. "We're having a picnic. Would you like to join us?" Lily looked up, her eyes wide and hesitant. He noticed a small, almost imperceptible smile twitch at the corner of her lips. I don't have anything to bring." "Nonsense," Leo said, smiling warmly. "We have plenty. Mia made enough sandwiches for an army." He gestured towards the blanket where Mia was now surrounded by a small group of children, all laughing and chattering. Lily slowly nodded and stood up. As they walked towards the blanket, Leo felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something good. The afternoon unfolded like a dream. Mia orchestrated games of tag and Simon Says, her infectious enthusiasm drawing everyone in. Leo watched as Lily, initially reserved, tentatively joined in. He saw her smile, a genuine, radiant smile that lit up her whole face. She even laughed when Mia tripped while chasing a rogue frisbee, a sound that warmed Leo's heart. He sat back, watching the children play, the sun warm on his face. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter, the sweet smell of cookies, and the gentle rustling of leaves. For the first time in a long time, Leo felt a sense of peace. He had created a small haven, a moment of joy, for these kids, and especially for Lily. The picnic was a success. A little kindness. The checkered blanket felt soft beneath Leo as he watched Mia bound towards a figure huddled under the sprawling oak tree. It was the same girl he'd seen crying for the past week. He'd packed extra sandwiches just in case. He'd learned a long time ago that food was a simple bridge across loneliness. Mia knelt beside the girl, her bright chatter carrying on the gentle breeze. Leo couldn't make out the words, but he saw Mia offer a sandwich. The girl, whose name he later learned was Lily, hesitantly accepted. Leo watched, a familiar knot of anxiety loosening in his chest. He'd been so focused on protecting Mia, on preventing her from experiencing the pain he knew so well, that he'd almost missed an opportunity to teach her something invaluable, the quiet power of kindness. Soon, both girls were giggling, their laughter echoing through the park. Lily, her face still slightly blotchy from crying, was now animatedly describing something with wide gestures. Mia mirrored her enthusiasm, her own laughter infectious. Leo had worried Lily's sadness would cast a shadow on Mia, but instead, Mia had brought a little sunshine into Lily's world. He busied himself setting out the rest of the picnic, a simple spread of fruit, cheese, and crackers. When Mia called him over, Lily's eyes were wide with curiosity. "This is my dad," Mia announced proudly. Lily, still shy, offered a small hello. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Leo smiled. "Hi, Lily. We're glad you could join us." He noticed the girl's clothes were a little worn, but clean. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple braid. She clutched a worn copy of a fantasy novel. As they ate, Leo subtly steered the conversation, learning that Lily had just moved to town with her grandmother. Her parents were away. He didn't pry. He knew how painful those kinds of absences could be. Instead, he talked about the upcoming community center bake sale that Ms. Rodriguez had mentioned needing volunteers for and the new climbing frame being built in the park. Small, normal things. Later, as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grass, Lily actually smiled. A genuine, unreserved smile that transformed her face. She and Mia were comparing drawings, their heads bent close together. "Thank you," Lily said quietly to Leo as they packed up. "For the lunch and everything." Leo just nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "Anytime, Lily. We'll be here tomorrow." Walking home, hand in hand with Mia, Leo felt a lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The knot in his chest was gone, replaced by a quiet sense of fulfillment. He glanced down at Mia, her face glowing with happiness. He'd been so afraid of the world, of its potential to inflict pain, that he'd almost forgotten the simple joy of connection, the profound impact of a little kindness. He realized he wasn't just protecting Mia, he was showing her how to navigate the world, how to be a force for good, one sandwich, one smile, one friendship at a time. And maybe, just maybe, in helping Lily, he was finally starting to heal himself, too.